Hello everybody, welcome back to the James Allcott channel and the Dream Teams series. You can hear my voice is a little bit hoarse, so hopefully you can hang around with me for this one because I think it's going to be really different, really interesting, especially if you're a Championship fan. Before I reveal our guest, I do want to just do a shout out for Dev Bajwa, because Dev is a really hard-working guy who's just trying to kind of make a break in terms of being an author, and he's put together this fantastic book. Look, very in-depth. It's called The Football Spiderweb. Let me just read this. Over the years, we've been blessed to witness a number of key moments which brought our wonderful game to life. But now it's time we stop considering them independently and instead as a series of links which combine to bring us from the past to the future, which kind of links in with Dream Teams, which we're going to be talking about. The big thing I want to say with this is that there is a link in the description. Now, I get a lot of messages from people who are trying to make their way in football media, and it's really tough, as my guest is about to, we can talk about that with my guest in a sec. But this guy, Dev, has worked really hard to get this published. This is his first break. And so with these kind of things, I just want to reward that hard work now that I've got a little bit of a platform. And you guys can help him out as well by getting your hands on a really fantastic book. So support each other, support Dev. Link is in the description. Go and get this book and enjoy it, because it's an absolute belter as well. And there is links with the past to the future. It's absolutely everywhere, which we'll probably see as we go through Dream Teams now and in the future as well. So go and support Dev. Link is in the description. On to our guest, and this is really exciting for me because, you know, I'm a QPR fan. I watch a lot of the Championship, but I also spend most of my week listening to this man's voice, be it not the Top 20 podcast or Zonal Marking, which is fantastic with Michael Cox as well. Ali Maxwell joins me today to go through his dream team. Ali, thank you for joining me, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm really chuffed to be joining you. I have very much followed your journey, this channel's journey. I love, a bit like what you were saying about Dev there and his book, which looks excellent. I just love following the journeys of content creators who you can tell are going to offer something special. The building of a community around the whole channel is something that we've done on a slightly smaller, maybe more niche scale when it comes to the EFL, and it just makes me really happy. So seeing you hit 100k last week, it sounds like you might have overcooked it a little bit in the celebrations.
I've got to say, so stick with me, guys. My voice is struggling a little bit, but I've got some honey and lemon, so hopefully we can get through it. But Ali, you're going to be doing the bulk of the talking because we're going to get straight into your team, mate. So I've kind of given you a bit of a task, which of course with the podcast, and guys, if you haven't checked out the podcast that Ali does, then again, links are in the description. I listen to them every single week. You guys should as well, especially if you're a Championship fan or you want to know more about Championship players, which is often very important because they end up being Premier League players, as this Dream Team will show. Let's get into your team then. So I asked you to put together your greatest Championship team. And I'm surprised, I've got to be honest, I am surprised with some of the choices, but that's the whole point of this series, is that they're players that you care about and like. And so I will put forward a few different options, but I mean, it's slightly a futile task because it doesn't matter. It's your team. So let's get straight into it with your goalkeeper in this team. And actually, have you got a bit of a formation as well? Have you put together a formation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 4-3-3 of sorts, but, you know, I would, and I'm not sure you even asked me to pick a manager, but I would have Marcelo Bielsa managing this team, and he can do whatever he wants with whatever players he is given. So there you go.
Well, look, that's the last question I normally ask is who would be your manager? And I try to catch people off guard, but you're far too well prepared. I saw that you picked your manager there. So let's talk about Bielsa, actually. Let's go back to front on this one. I can probably understand why you've chosen Bielsa, but why do you feel like he is, why is he your choice?
Well, like, I'm someone who, and you'll notice this in my team, since I've really started focusing on the Championship and covering it as best as I can and putting so much time into it, that's probably since the start of the 15-16 season. So this is generally a team from the last half a decade.
Yeah. But
before that, and, I'm a football fan in general. As you say, I host the Zonal Marking podcast with Michael Cox for The Athletic. We don't talk about the EFL very often on there. I love all football in all its different shapes and sizes. And so Bielsa, for someone my age, who was a massive football hipster and football nerd, like leaving school and going through uni and stuff, I genuinely, like, in my most hipsterish phase was when Bielsa was manager of Athletic Bilbao and they beat United in the UEFA Cup or the Europa League. And I'd never seen a team play like that. So you know, there is this mythology around him, and some people wouldn't have been that across it before he came to England. I would say I was more across it maybe than most. And so I was so excited, but also nervous because he's known as being, you know, a bit of a nutter in some ways. Some of his previous jobs.
Well, that's the word you used there, the mythology. He is a mythological figure. And what I think is probably the most impressive thing is that he's had longevity with Leeds, you know, and which was something that was labelled against him for quite a while. But he's still got that. He's still mythological somehow. Yeah. You know, he's doing, because of the, you know, the post-match interviews where he's not speaking, no doubt he's got good English. And no doubt Pochettino got that trick from him prior to that. Yeah, but it's amazing how ambiguous he is as a leader. For sure. A great choice. I think that makes complete sense. Obviously, there's other managers that have got more promotions, but in terms of having an impact, and again, like you say, coming into the Premier League, playing the same way, and the fans being able to enjoy it, because I think that's a discussion I've had with different people this season, and it's often the fans of the big teams that kind of go, this is silly playing like this against Man United. It's not, because you're actually going to go play the next game and beat Newcastle United 3-0, and actually over a course of a season, it's far more important to be playing good football.
Could not agree more.
Right, let's get into the team here. As Ali has revealed already, this is a young team. I was expecting a few more sort of maybe some of the older guys along the way, and I guess I can offer a few of those guys. So I'll tell you who it's not, guys. First of all, it's not Speroni, which I thought might be an option for your championship team of all time, because I was trying to think of players that some play for QPR that I'm going to talk about, but a lot of them don't. I mean, Paddy Kenny is one of those who's known as a kind of championship goalkeeper. Also, John Ruddy, I think 3 promotions for him as well.
Yeah.
None of those are your choice. Who is your choice for your goalkeeper, mate?
Well, I've gone with Dean Henderson. This is a... Basically, I have this problem with goalkeepers, James.
I've heard about this.
Firstly, I you know, we all put our opinions down on football a lot, and depending on how confident we are in them, you know, we think for the most part we're not just saying things for the sake of it and having strong opinions. In most positions in the pitch and on tactical stuff and recruitment and stuff, I'm happy to put down my opinion. When it comes to goalkeeping, I'm happy to say, like, I can't tell you the ins and outs. Obviously, you know when a keeper is a good shot stopper, prone to a mistake, all that sort of stuff. But when you start talking about like, oh, his distribution is way better than his, or oh, his shape, his form when a shot is taken is more optimal than that keeper, that's when I'm like, no, I can't offer much there. But also, and this is the main one, and it's been a bit of an on-running joke through the podcast for years, is like, if a keeper joins the Championship and has a good few months, fans of that club are so quick to give it the big and be like, yeah, he's the best keeper in the league, mate. You won't see a keeper this good. And what we've noticed over the years is there's like this curse on Championship goalkeepers. You cannot have more than about 3 months without a howler and play really, really well. So, for example, the last few years, you know, we've had Raphael in goal for Reading. Great story, great career. Brilliant when he started. And then when it mattered, chucked a few in. Bryce Samba plays for Forest, exactly the same. He came in. Yeah. We were like, this bloke's unbelievable. And then it turns out he's prone to a howler as well. So almost everyone is. I've picked Henderson mostly because I wanted to include someone from that Sheffield United side that went up under Chris Wilder, because they were a brilliant team to cover. Clearly for us doing this podcast, but not focusing on one individual team, one of the things that we know our audience are most interested in, which is also what we're most interested in, is youth development, the development of young players, and trying to predict which ones will reach the top. Because in every England squad over the last 10 years, if you look at the player histories on Wiki, you'll find about 60, probably 2/3 of them have played in the EFL at some point. So we know in any given season, some of these players will probably play for England, but you can't just blanket it and say they all will. So you've got to work out who it is. And the thing with Henderson is, if you look at every goalkeeper that's played for England recently, almost all of them, it's different pathway for keepers. It doesn't really matter where you're playing between like 19 and 23. It just matters that you are playing and that you're learning what it's like to be a goalkeeper when the pressure's on. And so you've got Dean Henderson, whose career appearances, albeit all on loan from United, were Stockport, Grimsby, Shrewsbury, Sheffield United, going up one level each time and getting better and improving and making the odd mistake. But there was something about Henderson, I think his mentality, you could tell he had such a strong character, and I think that always bodes well. I don't think people are sure that he's definitively, you know, top elite material for a decade. But if you don't give him a go, then you'll never know. And in the case of a lot of these players, they do just need a chance. He's always proven himself wherever he's been.
Well, I think that's the thing I'm kind of starting to think about quite a lot. And I'd imagine your kind of radar for it is much stronger than mine with the amount of Championship football that you're watching, or EFL football that you're watching. Is that often when players then go into the Premier League, there's still a bit of hesitancy on are they good enough? And there is a moment where it kind of it then sort of they break through.
Do you know what?
In terms of perception.
I'll be stronger. It's snobbery. It's snobbery.
Yeah.
It's like footballing snobbery. It's like, oh, but he was in the division below this division, so he can't be very good. Otherwise, he'd be here. And what you realise when you study thousands of players is pathways are so different. There's so much luck involved, and the decisions of where you move to are crucial as well. So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to be stronger there. It's snobbery.
Yeah. I think there is an element of snobbery. I think there's also, look, you go up to the next level and then you wait and see. Like, for example, there's a lot of talk about Oliver Skipp at the moment, and I think he will certainly be a Premier League footballer, but will he be, people kind of give him two jumps, if you know what I mean. Will he be a Premier League football? Absolutely. Will he be the answer that they wanted Harry Winks to be? I don't know, because that's a really, really high jump. The last thing I want to say
that's a fair point.
Dean Henderson is, like you say, Stockport County, 9 games on loan. Grimsby Town, 7 games on loan. Shrewsbury Town, they love a goalkeeper, don't they? They love a good goal. Joe Hart was there before and did well for them. And then, that great spell at Sheffield United, which, like you say, I think you really can see how crucial it is to play games, to have that experience. Someone who's 100%. Not in your team, Adam Lallana, great example of that, kind of making his way through the leagues. And even these players that are not going to go into the Championship, they're going to Bundesliga now because they need those minutes. And you've seen that with Dean Henderson. Right, we move on into the right back position. And I know we're both Football Manager fans, and this guy was huge for me last season at right back. He's QPR through and through in my head, if not in real life. It's James Justin. Now, I was again surprised for you to pick another young player, but is it going along the same route somewhat with the fact that he just has so much potential? He's so exciting.
I can't tell if I'm happy or sad that I was tough to predict in this sense. But it's going to be a bit of a theme. This is a classic case of what is a huge part of following the EFL closely. Like, I think on a sporting level, it's more interesting. Like the fact that it's slightly lower quality than the Premier League is less important to me than the competitiveness of it. The fact that there's so little between each team in the league, other than maybe a Norwich at the top and 1 or 2 at the bottom. That's what makes going into each game for me like exciting, because I don't really know what's going to happen. You can't really predict what's going to happen. But it's certainly true that there's like that kind, I don't know if it's football hipster. I guess I've misused that phrase.
Do you think it's a bit like music fans who want to find the new band?
Definitely.
Because
mate, 100%.
With Justin going to Luton, there will be these players that he's come from where? Okay, I'll just keep an extra eye on him to see that. I know I saw him at Luton. And I've loved it. I mean, I don't mind it. That's the great thing with Eze, because I'm always like, I saw his first game, so I'm better than you.
So yes, it's definitely that. I will not make any bones about it. That feels great. And of course, there are players that don't make it that you've told all your mates about as well. So you have to own those too. But when you saw Justin break into the Luton's first team, like the first thing to say is they were already a really good League One team. A League Two side. They won back-to-back promotions. And for Justin to establish himself during a run like that in such a high-performing team, well, that was the sort of first thing you noticed. They already had a good right back, and he's right-footed, so he didn't have an in there. They had a good left back called Potts, and I think Potts got injured, so they were like, okay, we'll give Justin a chance. But he's playing on the wrong side. He's like 18 years of age, and you think, they've chucked him in at the deep end. And, midway through the season, you realise he's probably their best player, and that's so exciting. And I think the first thing you saw about him was he's not necessarily one of the really modern, exciting, attacking wing-back types. He's just a really good all-rounder. But also, you said you said you'd like a little personal aspect to this. I don't want it all to be like this young player we knew early and he made it to the top. We went to the EFL Awards maybe 2017. It was really exciting for us because we got invited by the EFL, and they said we could do a bit of content with the players as well, which as content creators was very exciting. And we had 2 minutes per player. and you've got to come up with something that's half interesting. So we just asked players to do a five-a-side team from the league that they play in, like a sort of dream team, a bit like this, but for that season. And Justin was in League One team of the season, and his Luton side had got promoted, and he didn't pick a single Luton player, which I just found hilarious. All the other players, mate, they it's really tough for players constantly getting interviewed, constantly being asked questions, and they freeze up sometimes, and that's understandable, especially young players. Most of them just picked their teammates because they didn't want to let their mind open up to just buying into it. And Justin was a complete opposite. He picked like 3 players from Barnsley who they'd been scrapping for the title with, and he just came across as such a smart, humble guy. He stuck around for like 5 minutes chatting about football with us. And so I've always just wanted to do well since then. And thankfully he has done, until he picked up this injury recently.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's like, it's important. Those little moments make a massive difference. You can, with players, because I think that we've had, the Sahara Desert of footballers for the last 10, 15 years. It feels like a little bit. And I do feel like there's a different comfort now with social media, and the fact that you can finding the lane where you can have a personality and you're not going to get completely destroyed for it. But if you are as well, you can kind of deal with it on your own terms. And that's lovely to hear that.
Oh, mate, I mean, the young generation are so exciting on that front, aren't they? Like, you listen to, honestly, any of them, like Maddison in his interviews, but even someone like Bellingham, you have to pinch yourself and remind yourself that they're 17 years old. And I know being a footballer at 17 is very different to you or I, James, still at school or whatnot, and whatever our paths were. But it is amazing the maturity that they have. So, yeah, really exciting.
Let's move into our centre-backs. Just to say, let us know your championship team down below. I'm really intrigued to know who people would put in their championship dream team. A couple of right-backs there. I just did have... Bruno was one. Trippier with his crosses for Burnley a few seasons ago was an absolute joke as well. We move into the centre-back positions. A couple of... notable mentions from me. Matt Connolly for QPR, Reading, Cardiff. I think 4 clubs, 5 promotions, something ridiculous like that. And never really was able to kind of make it at that Prem level. So very much known as that championship player. Richard Keogh played a lot of games in the championship. He'll always be a hero to me for the playoff final. And Wes Morgan as well, who was just... There's some players, certainly as a QPR fan, you go to Loftus Road and you think... I often kind of think of the centre-backs and I go, oh... Like the likes of like a Wes Morgan, I was just like, or Ayala, or Lewis Dunk, like they're just like, they're too big, like we can't handle this. Who have you gone for as your? Actually, one of these is probably in that realm. But who are your 2 centre backs? Go for it, mate.
Yeah, so Sol Bamba's the first one. I think this is actually a stronger personal pick than anything football related. And Sol Bamba, we met. It was one of the first times we went into Sky, so we're still really nervous. The first few times you do TV. The cameras seem impossibly close. You don't know what to do with your hands. Your mouth goes dry. Like, it's nerve-wracking stuff. And he was there. We were on with him, I think, doing I think the fixtures had just been announced. It was a summer and we were on Sky Sports News. And we sat with him for an hour. I've never met anyone more engaging, more fun, more. I think one interesting way of measuring people, not just footballers, by the way, anyone, is not just how interesting are they, but how interested are they? Like, how much will they ask about you? Are they just, is there some weird dynamic where it's all about them and you're like interviewing them, or is it a two-way conversation? And I think with Sol, what struck George and I was he was just so engaging and asked us all about us. He was the first person that had ever done that, was really interested. He was like, can I have your numbers? Because I want to talk to you guys more in the future, but I've got to go. Like, that sort of thing makes a big impact. And he's known across the game for that. His journey is amazing as well. So he was at PSG as a kid. He's obviously plays for Ivory Coast, but came through at PSG. His first move from PSG was to Dunfermline in Scotland. Not a classic move, that. And then he went to Hibs, and then obviously came down to Leicester. And because he had a few years in Scotland, and he didn't speak the language at first, he picked it up in Scotland. He told this amazing story where he learns English with a Scottish accent as a huge Ivorian centre-back. And he gets to Leicester and he goes to his press conference, his unveiling, and, gets lobbed a softball question. How does it feel? And he starts speaking and every journo in the room just creases, just bursts out laughing because his accent is astounding. So, yeah, that's a personal one because he's also... he won promotion with Cardiff under Neil Warnock. That was an incredible story. When Warnock was appointed, they were in the relegation zone, and we never considered Cardiff to be a side that would be challenging for the top level. Warnock brought in a couple of freebies as soon as he arrived in October, like proper champ man style. One of them was Sol Bamba. He was without a club at the time, picked him up on a free.
This sounds really familiar with QPR. You know, Derry Hill, Mackie.
Less than 18 months later, Bamba is captain, winning promotion to the Premier League, and that was excellent. But also, just lastly, I mean, he's had a really tough time. He got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma late last year. So although he's still part of Cardiff's squad and a senior member, he hasn't been able to train and play. He's had a lot of treatment, and it looks like everything's going well. He actually tweeted yesterday pictures of him training for the first time.
Amazing.
And, you know, when there's someone that you feel a little connected with on an emotional level, that was it was amazing to see. So I had to put him in my team because I just love Sol Bamba.
That's it, mate. That's it. And that's all the reason you need. Yeah, an amazing career. I went to Turkey as well, Trabzonspor as well, Palermo, Italy. I mean, do you know what? Just looking at that, it sounds like I'd love to chat to him. It'd be great to get him on here, because I tell you what, there's got to be some players he's played with along the way. There's got to be some 100%.
Stories. Yeah, and Leeds as well. Leeds under Chilino, who was that crazy owner they had.
Yeah.
Chilino loved Bamba, and so he would phone him up or just rock up at his house at like 3 a.m. and be like, "I want to sack the manager." And he'd be like, "Oh, mate, not again, not again." Anyway, the next centre-back is Adam Webster. This one can be a little bit swifter, because actually Webster, as much as I like him as a player, and I'm glad to see him, you know, establishing himself in the Premier League with Brighton, this was more about starting to appreciate a certain type of player, and that is the ball-carrying centre-back. Everyone knows that nowadays at the very top level, as I said earlier, centre-backs get so many touches, they have to initiate the attack a lot of the time. So ball-playing centre-backs, that's gone a bit mainstream. But over the last few years in the EFL, we've had this newly developed role of like the centre-back who gets the ball, the opposition aren't necessarily pressing high. They're kind of maybe man-marking those that you might think would receive the first pass. And so they just get on their bike. They just carry it. And Webster, who's like 6'4", 6'5", the sight of him galloping forward when he was like 21 years old through the heart of championship teams was brilliant. And it's so valuable as well. Like, you've seen Sheffield United go up and they get this, this whole thing about overlapping centre-backs and centre-backs carrying the ball into the final third. Teams didn't understand who to send to that player because their marking system was completely broken down. So it was almost like a little thing where Webster was a bit of a pioneer in that sense, and now we've got quite a few. And now it's almost like we talk a load about recruitment and transfers and who from the lower leagues you might want to pick up. And in centre-back terms, you have to be good defensively, and Webster is. You have to dominate your aerial duels, and you have to be positioned well. But what you can do on the ball in terms of passing or carrying it makes a huge difference as well. So not surprised to see him thriving in the Prem, because from the very first time we saw him, he just had this kind of unique skill set, which was really exciting.
Yeah, and I think with Brighton, actually, he's kind of the guy that seems to be forgotten a lot of the time. You've got, people talking about Ben White or, Lewis Dunk or whoever it might be with the different centre-backs. In particular, so much excitement over Ben White this season after the season he had at Leeds. But Webster's been, very steady, very strong. And like you say, again, played a lot of games, which is good, it, again, leads to that development. It is interesting with the first Dream Teams with Rory, who's a Chelsea fan, he had Ruud Gullit in his team, and I think that's the thing that with him, and you're now seeing it with all these players, like you just said, when a centre back just goes, everyone's like, well, hang on, whoa, what are you doing? That's your your bit's here, like my bit's here. I can't deal with it. It's fascinating to see. And then I think as two guys who love the game and love the tactics of football as well, I think what's exciting with things like that is then what's the counter move to that, and then what's the what the gaps that left, and it means that the game continues to evolve, which is 100%. Everything, right? It's everything to keep it exciting. We move to left back, and I'm fuming because Clint Hill is not in your team. An absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Also, Ryan Sessegnon was
basically your team. This is interesting. This just shows how your sort of love affair with the Championship has been through the QPR lens. Is that your team are basically my team a decade before?
Yeah,
right.
Well,
you've got like the generation above, I think.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think of good players. I'm basically going through the championship winning side of 2010. But Clint Hill, would have obviously be in mine. But this isn't my team. There was Ryan Sessegnon as well. I think who kind of burst on the scene and was really exciting. Someone that people were talking about a lot. But it's actually another Fulham player that you've gone for.
Yeah, Fulham player in Joe Bryan. This is kind of more the Bristolian in him, coming through at Bristol City. First few seasons that we were covering the leagues, Bristol City, and Adam Webster was playing there as well. They had a really fun, vibrant, young team. They weren't necessarily winning every game, and that almost made it better because, they were kind of learning and developing this group of young players all together. And Bryan was a big part of that. Classic modern fullback in that his strengths, it was very apparent early on, were in going forward. He's always been considered a suboptimal defensive left back, I guess, which might have held him back a little bit in the Premier League. I know he copped a bit of flack when Fulham were relegated 2 seasons ago, but at Championship level, he's so assured on the ball. His stamina, his fitness is incredible. So physically, he's excellent. And, crossing it in for Mitro to head home was a real staple of last season with Fulham. But it's more about that Bristol City side. He's a Bristol boy through and through. I love players who break through in their academy system, who get a chance, a bit like James Justin. Guys who is one thing being highly rated in an academy, but to actually get to the point where the fans aren't saying, oh, it's exciting young player, but actually, no, that's a key player for our first team. That's what I love to see. But also some great moments he was involved with. He scored a banging goal against Man United when Bristol City had a run in the Carabao Cup where they got to the semis, played City at that time. Bobby Reed playing for that team as well. He scored a smashing goal. And he also scored that incredible winning goal in the playoff final last year. So that's like an iconic moment, sadly behind closed doors. Yeah. But that you can't get away from an incredible goal like that you've never really seen before on a big stage like that.
Which I might be wrong in this. I'm just going from the stats that I've got in front of me. But apparently that's his only goal for Fulham. Which is, if that's the case, that's probably right. What? I mean, that's one of those, would you rather score 4 or 5 or you just take that one? I think you just take that one, don't you? Like, absolutely, so cheeky, that goal. If you haven't seen it from the playoff final against Brentford, David Raya, is it, in goal?
Yeah, that's right.
Caught him off guard. He's very clever.
Yeah, he's just, there's a personal touch as well, though. Like, obviously, certainly through our NTT20 pod Insta account, we follow a lot of players, and he's just, I'm sure we're all the same. We all follow lots of people on different social media platforms, and sometimes you follow them for entertainment, and sometimes you follow someone, and even if you never meet them or talk to them, after a while, you just think that's just a good person. Like, that's just a good, interesting person. And Joe Bryan's very much like that. He definitely bucks the trend, or what people think a modern footballer is, which I don't think is always fair, that stereotype. Yeah. He's always tweeting about the books that he reads. He's been very open about mental health issues, specifically a sort of what's called situational anxiety that he suffered when he moved away from Bristol, where he'd always lived. He was the golden boy, right. Always one of the great athletes in his comfort zone, I guess. And then going to Fulham in the Premier League, he really struggled, and he's spoken openly about that. There's a brilliant interview with him on The Athletic about that. So just lots of reasons why I like Joe Bryan. I guess that's a bit of a theme. There's like footballing ones, iconic moments, great player to watch, but also on the more human side, I think that plays a big role into how I engage with football as well. So I really he's one of those blokes. I don't think it's particularly cool to say. He's one of those blokes who you think, I reckon we could be mates. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, Joe. Yeah. I mean, the threat is out there, Joe. If you're watching this one, if you would like a new friend, my missus likes to make a new friend each year. So maybe if you are in that, if you want to do the same thing, nice. Ali's right here for you. The next one, I love this. Great choice, and has everything. Has the story, but certainly has the personal touch. Having listened to the podcast that you did with your next pick, your one of your centre midfielders, for him to have the story that he's had. He's also my kind of player as well in terms of how he plays, but it seems like just a really good egg. Who's your centre midfielder?
Yeah, Conor Harahan is going to have to do a lot of work off the ball here at the base of the midfield, but he's perfect for this team. He basically ticks every single box. I think the first thing to say about Conor before I get self-indulgent is he has lived, there's the American dream, and there's what I consider the EFL dream, and that was the basis of a podcast series that we did called EFL Completed. Not just the players who reached the Premier League, who were always destined for it, but actually players who had played League Two then League One, then Championship, then Premier League. It was very specific. They had to have played all 4 divisions so that you really appreciated the journey that they'd been on to get where they'd be, or to get where they got to. So for Hourihane, moved over from Ireland at 16 to the Sunderland Academy. Roy Keane was the manager at the time, never broke through there. Moved to Ipswich, where Roy Keane was the manager, never got a chance there. So he gets released. I think he's probably 19
Has
or
he
20
said
years
anything
old.
on that? Is it, did Roy Keane like him or not like him?
Well, Keane didn't last that
anyone?
long. Yeah, I think, well, he has said that when he first moved to Sunderland, loads of teams wanted him. He was a really talented player in West Cork in Ireland. And he chose Sunderland partly because when Roy Keane gives your parents a call at that time, this iconic figure, an idol of his, that was the right choice. But it didn't work out, and nor did it work out at Ipswich. So suddenly you have a 20-year-old kid who, a lot of it is expected of him because where he's from in Ireland, he's the golden boy sportsman. He's moved over at 16. There's real pressure these guys have when they move over at such a young age. And 4 years on, he still hasn't played a senior game. So he's thinking, maybe I just sack it in, go and play in the League of Ireland and, do what I need to do. He gets a chance with Plymouth, who at the time, I think the manager's paying the heating bills because they're completely out of money. Yeah. And within a year, he's the captain of Plymouth. He's the heartbeat of the team. They don't do particularly well the 2 seasons that he's there, but it's one of those like, wow, we've somehow unearthed a gem here. And then he moves up to Barnsley in League One. Again, he's part of a young, exciting team. This is when he really came on our radar, just when we started the pod, scoring free kicks, taking wicked set pieces, just a beautiful left foot. Barnsley get promoted. Then they really take the Championship by storm for half a season with this group of young players. And then they basically all get sold. And the Barnsley dream dies. They end up getting relegated. Hourihane moves to a Villa side who are desperate to get back up to the Prem, but are making a real meal of it. The first 2 seasons Villa were in the Championship. They were terrible considering how they should be. Like under Di Matteo, I think Steve there was a manager in between, and then Steve Bruce was just. Maybe not, to be fair, but Bruce's Villa were terrible to watch. So when he was at Plymouth, there's an interview with the local paper. He's like 22. He's probably played 50 career games in League Two. And he gets asked, what are your goals? And he says, I want to play in the Premier League. And someone tweeted him. So this is probably 8 years ago, I reckon. Someone tweeted him saying, Conor, you're a great player. I love watching you play for Argyle, but come on, mate, like get your head out of the clouds. You're obviously not going to play in the Premier League. And I kid you not, he told us this on the pod that a week after Villa won promotion to the Premier League and he realised he was going to be a Premier League player, he was on holiday with his missus, kicking back, and he remembered the tweet and he found it and he quote tweeted it and gave it the old you don't always have to be giving your opinions because I'm just going to keep working.
What's exciting about the fact that he goes through the leagues like you said, he has a far more sort of a holistic understanding of
100%.
The EFL, of Premier League football, and very different situations. Like I say, Plymouth just hanging in there. Barnsley are what could be here, and the idea of and how that feels, because that team wasn't expected to do what it did. And then Aston Villa just bone-crushing pressure to get out of the Championship.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
I remember it was because I think a lot of teams that kind of big teams that come down that have big wage bills, like I saw it with QPR, it's crippling the pressure that it can put on them, and you need really strong characters to be able to deal with that. And Conor Hourihane, absolute baller. I love the use of the word heartbeat as well. I love players who are that heartbeat, and he certainly is. Right, so here we go. Well excited about this bit. Now, so in terms of those midfielders, a couple that I just wrote down just to kind of get about that. Grant Ledbetter, go away. Like, I hated playing against him. He always scored against us. Always seemed to be a penalty that he always scored as well. Grant Ledbetter. Championship shout out again, Sean Derry. But Palace, Leeds, other teams as well. And also another one, probably this is going way back because I've seen with your team, obviously you're a bit more up to date with it. Graham Kavanagh was a really, really good midfielder, a bit like Conor Hourihane actually. In terms of your other midfielders, first of all, let's talk about my boy. And people on this channel, literally, they've just said they know the name. They know who we're about to talk about. But I'll let you do the honours, Ali. Who is your first attacking midfielder? You've kind of got to him.
Abere Eze is going to play in a 3-8 role. I think you'd probably call it in a Bielsa system. Spicy. And it's pretty exciting because, personally, emotionally, if that's the right word. I think Eze's the one for me. I think he's my like true golden boy from the last 5 years of covering the EFL, because firstly, he's easily the most fun player to watch because of his style, because technically carrying the ball through midfield, receiving it out on the left and dribbling in field. There aren't many more exciting sort of single moments in a football match than seeing Ebere Eze run with the ball, because you know that they're probably not going to be able to stop him. And it's almost like the key is what will be his decision at the edge of the box. Will he shoot? Will he pass? Will he dribble again? And sometimes with these players, because they're so good, you almost get a bit frustrated sometimes. It's the same with Grealish, who I'll talk about in a second. Like, you think to yourself, well, if no one can tackle you, why don't you just keep going? Why don't you go that extra step? But clearly that's ridiculous. Like, only Messi basically does that. But yeah, I mean, in full flight, Eze's just incredible. But, there's a journey aspect to it as well. It's clearly something that really resonates with me, seeing these guys from a young age. And Eze, more than anyone, was like, he got released by 3 or 4 clubs, probably, including Millwall, who, you look back now and you think, what did you see, or what did you not see there? Insane, right? But even at QPR, I wasn't aware of him necessarily as like, he's breaking into the first team. So the first time you're aware of him is you're watching the highlights on a Saturday night, and some kid who plays for Wickham in League Two has scored 2 goals, both from 25 yards, one with his right foot and one with his left foot. And when you watch a lot of EFL highlights like we do, when you see something like that, you just make a quick note. You go like, right, I've seen something that's too good for that level. And quite often, there's a guy called Jordan Bowery, who's a striker in League Two. And I've always had this thing about Bowery where sometimes you see him score a goal and you're like, mate, you're big, strong, quick and skillful, and you've got an eye for goal. You should be playing higher up. But sometimes, whether it's mentality or consistency or their body lets them down, they don't always reach the potential that you think they have. But with Eze, it was like, right, who's this kid? And then you hear from Wickham fans that not only is he doing that, but he's just going around nutmegging players for fun. And you're like, wow, okay, we need to watch this kid. And so obviously the next, 2.5 seasons with QPR was just absolutely joyous. I can't tell if it was made better by the fact that you guys haven't been a team that has really challenged towards the top. Part of me would love to see him, or would have loved to see him play for a championship side where he wasn't the first, second and third attacking threat.
The team, last season's team, if Naki Wells stays in that team, you just wonder if we might have been able to kind of put something together, because first half of the season, we sort of, we went toe to toe with pretty much everyone we played, even the likes of, Fulham. I remember the first half against Fulham, we should have been 2 or 3 ahead. But going back to what you were saying in terms of us struggling the season before with McLaren, we needed him. We needed him so bad. And for a player that comes through, you let him go to Wickham, and QPR do seem to have quite a strong link with Wickham in terms of players that we let go there with Gareth Ainsworth.
Because of Ainsworth, right? Yeah.
Because of Ainsworth, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he goes, and then you do start to hear these things, and you think, oh, go on. Please be able to go deal with the step up. But to be honest, I already knew it, because he played his debut an FA Cup game, and he only lasted 18 minutes. He got injured. But honestly, and it's not happened many times, certainly hasn't happened many times with youth players for QPR, who QPR up until the last couple of seasons were terrible when it came to youth players. Excuse me. He played 18 minutes of this game. I can't remember who we were playing. It might have been Blackburn, something like that. And you were just like, oh my God, he's just trotting about, going, yeah, I'll have it. And I'll beat a player and I'll give it to you. And it's almost like he was kind of going, I'll be a little bit conservative now. And then, in time we'll see it. And I was like, wow, like truly was wowed by him. And I think that the final thing to say about Ebere Eze is the style of the way that he gets on the ball, turns with the ball, his awareness, and I think the final thing, which I think is such a beautiful thing with footballers, is the players that don't look like they're running that hard, but still beating players. Like that's something that Eze has, an elegance that I was trying to pinpoint who he's kind of similar to. And there was one player that, not in terms of his time at Newcastle with the crosses that he would put in, but maybe more with Tottenham, David Ginola. He's got a little David Ginola vibe where he's just got incredible awareness, just frightening awareness. And I'm really excited to see where he goes. I'm pleased that Palace haven't ruined him And
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what they do with him and with that squad, because
Me
Hodgson's
too.
always going to play a certain way, but you wonder who's the next manager, and is the next manager going to play a different style? Because I think you might even see an even better one. I think the final thing I'm quite surprised with, you've got Ben Rama and Eze. I would have said Ben Rama's the one that's going to kind of go further. I'm now not as sure. Like, I've been really impressed with Eze this season. I guess time will tell.
We'll move on to Grealish.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I genuinely think he's one of the best players in the world, James, and he played in the Championship for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Like, what was he doing there for 3 seasons?
Mate, I'm so pleased to hear you say that, because I banged the drum at this guy for a long time now, and in the Championship, like you say, and even going back, like you say, you make a little note of people. I remember Notts County. I remember him having that spell at Notts County. 2013-14. God knows how young he was then, because he's 25 now. But then he looked really exciting with the low socks and all that stuff, the naughty hair, which we all know and love now. But in the Championship, first of all, when you saw him play, against your team, but the playoff final that they lost, he dragged that team and nearly won the game single-handedly. Yeah. And that's why I kind of like. I feel really strongly about that thing, and I'm pleased you brought up the position thing as well, because I'm like, when I hear people go, left side or whatever, don't worry about it. Just get him in the team. You can play him in the middle. Yeah. Some people would say to me, because he operates on the left side a lot this season in particular. And that's allowed him to get into the box a little bit more, because he kind of has that route to it. But the seasons before that, in the Championship, he was playing through the middle 9 times out of 10, and he's fully capable of doing it. He's so good. The problem is, and you talk about the snobbery, it's because he's at Villa. It's and you get this a lot. It's like certain players that are at certain clubs cannot be world class because they're playing for Villa. It's nonsense. And with him in particular, I feel really strongly about it.
It's also like Villa start the season really well, and people are like, "Oh, Dean Smith's doing a great job," and Ollie Watkins has come in and he's lighting up the Premier League, and you're like, all of that is true, but let's not get away from the fact they have one of the best players in the world playing for them, and his numbers this season are insane. And clearly, when he's been out, they look like less than half the team, a quarter of the team. And the Championship, mate, I mean, watching Villa, my best mate's a Villa fan, so I watched so many of these games with him. And the amount of times, not so much under Smith, they became a much better team, and that allowed him to impact games more so. But under Bruce, it would be like, it was literally just give the ball to Grealish and see what he can do. And so it looks different to any other football match that you watch in the Championship, which are, even, everyone has an even number of touches, and, each match a different star might emerge. For Villa, it was like, my main memory is of Grealish standing still with the ball at his feet on the edge of the box with like 3 defenders on him. And you just think, is he going to 1-2? Is he going to somehow get through all 3 of them and then cut it back? Is he going to get a shot off? His game, I think the other thing says, we knew he was special in the first season, let alone the second and the third, but he still progressed hugely, developed hugely, like physically, in terms of taking on more responsibility, a bit like Eze, in terms of his decision-making in the final third, and understanding how to get the most out of his incredible skill set on the ball. It's been excellent. And I would just say, he's been involved in, and I genuinely just got a shiver down my spine as I intro this, he's been involved in the most iconic moment since we've been covering the leagues, which I still can't believe happened. And that is the game against Birmingham City, the fiercest derby perhaps that there is in English football, I think, in many ways. I've been to a couple of these and they are so terrifying. He's obviously Villa kid through and through. I picture doing the rounds yesterday of him aged like 4 wearing a Villa kit. You love that. Yeah. And the Birmingham City fan runs onto the pitch as they're waiting for a throw-in to be taken, and from behind basically smacks Grealish around the back of the head. And like, thankfully, it wasn't a very good connection, right? Grealish kind of goes down because he's like, what has happened here? Yeah. He kind of clubbed him. It wasn't really a punch. And obviously that's abhorrent, like insane. Yeah. I love a spicy derby, but clearly that's just a criminal, barbaric act, right? And yet he kind of laughed it off, even though everyone watching was like, wow, okay, we know players get abused, derby games, all bets are off, bad tackles, but like everyone watching was like, whoa, okay, no, that doesn't happen, right? And then not only that, he kind of laughs it off and then scores the winner. Birmingham away in the second half, just stands there, runs into the crowd. Like, I'm not a Villa fan, maybe a small soft spot because of my mate, but what an unbelievable moment that was. That's obviously, you've got Deeney goal in the playoffs against Leicester. That's got to be the best moment, I think, in the Championship ever. But that's got to run it a close second for a sort of individual match display.
And I think that what says a lot is that he got huge respect from 99.999% of the Birmingham City fans as well in that moment. Yeah, absolutely. And his post-match interview, I think, was fantastic as well. It's just like, this is a dream. I think he was he captain for the day as well. To captain and beat him and score the winner. That's all we need. We both love Grealish, which is great. So great choice there. I have few players that miss out. My very own Adel Taarabt misses out. Pablo Hernandez misses out. And Ali Benarbia as well, your namesake, the guy you were named after. Could have been in there as well. All great players.
I was looking at, as you do the other day, I was looking at the PFA Teams of the Year from yesteryear, and I think it's 0102. I think Benarbia and Robert Prozinecki are in the same Team of the Year. Amazing. And I wish I'd been a bit older then to appreciate that, because that must have been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about him, but I do remember. I know I've spoken to Man City fans. They talk about Ali Benarbia just being a joke. Right, let's move on to your front three. Let's start with a random choice that I will know, and people that love the podcast will know, because he's someone who's appeared on the podcast. But again, a slightly left field shout. Go for it, mate.
Maybe, yeah, it is Jed Wallace. There's definitely the personal factor to this. I did some radio with him about 5 years ago, and it was unusual because he was it was like a studio show. It wasn't an interview. You'll often get exclusive interviews with players. He just came in to chat football, aged 22, 23 in the TalkSport studio, and he knew so much. And he was like, we obviously got on there because I was like, wow, this bloke just loves the game, but he loves the Championship as well. He wasn't talking about himself or his own team. He was like, this is what it's like to come up against Eze. He even said to us on the pod, when I was playing against Eze, I thought to myself, don't get nutmegged because you'll end up as a meme, or there'll be a viral clip and you don't want to be on the end of that. So that sort of stuff. He's a genuinely brilliant broadcaster. I guess that's the first thing to say, which is sounds like a weird thing to say. He came on the pod last year and he came on a couple of weeks ago. And the first sentence, I don't know what it's like for you, but when we get players on the pod, and it's not something we do that much because we think they've already got media obligations, and I don't want on our channel, which is trying to cover 72 teams, to have a 15-minute, a quarter of a podcast. I don't want the old classic cliches of we're training really hard, the gaffer's doing really well, and we're looking forward to the next game. And I've had one where as soon as I asked the first question, I knew it was a bad one. And I was like, we can't have this too often because it's not engaging content. It's not interesting. And so there's this jeopardy now where you're like, clearly it's good for us to get players on. It's good because if they share it, you'll reach new people. But you want them to be good as well. I'm one of those people as a content creator, if you like. I just want the content to be good, and I think the rest will come. Outreach and retweeting it and sharing it to thousands. I think that will come if the content's good. So he just delights me because I know A, he's always up for it, and B, immediately he'll give you something good. We asked him about Barnsley. They had just played, and he went, lads, it's mental. I've never played against a team like this at any level that I've ever played, and then talked us through all the tactics behind it and why it was so crazy for him. So I love that. And he just loves being part of the league. He actually WhatsApped me on Tuesday night, Champions League games going on at the time. But he WhatsApped me, he was watching the Norwich-Huddersfield game, which Norwich won 7-0. Yeah. And when it went 4-0, he just went, mate, this could be 50. This could be 50-0. So I love that, just on a personal level. But I just think as a player, he doesn't get enough respect as well.
Yeah, no, look, I think he's a bit of a, he is a Millwall legend now, and I probably could have looked to try and kind of force that move to kind of see what he can do and see how high a level he can get to. And the thing I loved when he did come on the podcast, and it's not something that you expect to hear, like you say, you get all those cliches that come out. He was kind of saying, look, we're Millwall. We don't really play good football. We're gonna hit good areas. We're gonna do the right things, and we're gonna hope that you make more mistakes to us. And 46 games, we'll probably win. That'll get us the 20 wins or whatever it is. That's probably a lot, but we're going to get the wins that we need to stay up. So it is refreshing to hear that. And I think that just needs to be encouraged, doesn't it? More and more. You want to hear people that speak that way. So lovely shout.
And he loves it. He's one of those people who I'm sure would love to play in a team like Norwich, where as an attacking player, you think you're going to play 10-1-2s and score brilliant team goals. That's not the club that he plays for, but he buys into it massively. And over the last few years in the Championship, he's been relentless in terms of goals and assists. Millwall aren't a team that score a lot of goals, so you almost put more value in a goal or an assist for Wallace. But whenever they score, he tends to be involved. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens, because he's 27 now. I think he appreciates more being a big part of a team, because he made a move to Wolves after being the golden boy coming through at Pompey, and he had 2 years where he didn't play. And I think he lost 2 quite big years, formative years in his early 20s. So I think he's got that nice appreciation as well of the grass isn't always greener. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm a legend here. I play for a manager I like. It suits my style. He loves it. So yeah, we love Jed.
We love Jed. Final one. You spoke about him very briefly earlier, but I'm not surprised that this player's in here. He's lit up in 2 of the last 3 seasons, the Championship. Emi Buendia. What a player.
Yeah. It's a simple one, this, really, because it's like, the start of every season, every club's fans have told you all about their summer signings and how they're all going to be amazing and why they're going to be amazing. And you think, we'll wait and see. And in that first month or 2 of the season, a couple of players pop up you haven't seen before. And as I said, like with that Eze clip, you think, okay, so there's something here. There's something here. I don't know what it is. Is it going to continue all through the winter into spring? It is relentless and players do drop off. With Buendia, it was a bit like that. It was like, oh, who's this guy? He looks quite fun. He's clearly a smart player. He plays good, incisive passes. He can carry it a bit. He's kind of intense. Like he presses the hell out of the opposition, picks up a ton of cards. I think I really like this guy. And he's only, 22 years old. And Norwich have picked him up for peanuts, basically. And then, of course, by the end of that season, you realise he's in the top 3 players in the league. Pablo Hernandez, can't believe he's not in this team. But I kind of think of Buendia as, I did think of Buendia as his kind of heir apparent in the Championship. And now I think Buendia is actually just, top tier. Yeah. But I guess the big thing for me was like this season, Norwich start the season. Buendia, was he kind of angling for a move away? I think his head was turned a little bit. So he wasn't always starting the first few games. And then he starts establishing himself. And you just think to yourself, how is he, a bit like with Grealish, like how is this player playing in any second tier? We've got a great second tier, but he shouldn't be playing here. So yeah, this is a simple one. It's just a genuine pleasure to watch Buendia play. When you watch a Norwich game that you're going to be entertained because he's on the pitch, and that's pretty simple, but that's what we love when we cover these leagues. Yeah,
an incredible partnership with Pukki as well. I think it's 14 assists this year, which is miles ahead of anyone in the league. And again, talk about the sort of I guess the sort of hipster approach to all of this. I tell you what, every podcast I was listening to last season, or sort of in the summer, they were kind of going, they thought their sort of hipster shout was Buendia, and I was like, well, no, hang on a minute. Like he's clearly been good for 2 seasons prior to that. Far too good for the Championship. And I think one of those where when they signed him, I was like, what are they doing? Stuart Webber's there now. What's going on here? Because they've got they're signing someone from Getafe. There's got to be something in this. He's got to be decent, and he has proved to be. So
there's clearly, I like people who prove people wrong as well. The big thing about Buendia last summer was like he should be moving to a top team, and there's always there's 2 sides to every argument. But there were a lot of people saying he doesn't score enough goals. And you're like, okay, he's taken that on board. He's got 12 goals and 16 assists this season. Just his numbers are off the charts. And now that's gone a bit quiet because Buendia, turns out, does have an eye for goal. And now it's undeniable. There's really nothing you can point at. He deserves a chance for not just like a bottom half Premier League team. I think for a top 10 team.
I think that's the one scary thing from the strategy of Norwich, where they've kept a lot of these players like Max Aarons and Buendia and Cantwell, is that despite getting what you wanted, which is them going back up, can you, even in the Prem, can you hang on to these players? And Buendia is going to be one of the big talking points over the summer to see if they can hang on to him. Could be difficult for them. Final pick, and I know why you've picked this guy, and I'm absolutely fine with it. Just an unbelievable story, which, it certainly hasn't come to a conclusion yet, but certainly one sort of end of a certain chapter, reaching the pinnacle. Tell us who your final pick of your dream team is.
Yeah, England's Ollie Watkins here. But of course, it's about the journey, this one, James, because coming through at Exeter City, they've been a League Two club for 5 or 6 years now, since we've been covering the leagues. But it doesn't tell the whole story because they just consistently churn out these gems. Ampadu, of course, who's now playing for Sheffield United on loan from Chelsea. I mean, his development's been unbelievable. He left as a 16-year-old, so we didn't see him much. But Watkins broke into the Exeter side as kind of like a goal-scoring wide forward, I would say. He certainly wasn't a number 9. He was growing into himself, I think it's fair to say. He didn't have that upper body strength that now really sets him apart and means he can play this brilliant, complete forward number 9 role. You know, the likes of him and Calvert-Lewin, I think what stands out is just how much they've developed physically as well as being talented technically as well. And it means they can cope with, as I've said, defenders at the very top level who, as just athletes, are unbelievable. So, he was a big part of an Exeter side. We watched him, a bit like Eze on the highlights show. All of a sudden, this kid's scoring goals from outside the box, and you're like, no one seems to be able to tackle him. He's playing on these terrible pitches, but he seems to be making it look quite easy. And then he gets the move to Brentford, and we haven't really. It's unusual to talk about the Championship for an hour or more and not really mention Brentford much because they've been consistent force over the last few years. I know that. People like to say they're bottle jobs because they can't get over the line. At some point they will. It might not be this season, but they will.
I might be guilty of that. I think that we've come full circle here, which is nice because again, I think it comes down to development and the evolution of football itself. Because I think actually what you've got here in terms of Exeter City, Weston-super-Mare on loan, 10 goals in 24 games, then Brentford, then Aston Villa is both the development of a player in terms of getting that experience, but also maybe the development and pathway of the modern day striker. Because like you say, at Brentford, having to play on that left-hand side, I remember, when we play those derbies, him playing through the middle, you go, okay, I'm okay with that. Yeah. It's not like it's Hogan, a proper centre forward, but actually it's part of that pathway for him to be able to do absolutely everything and then almost allow his body to kind of catch up with him a little bit. And now he then goes to Aston Villa and hits the ground running and is playing for England. So it is really interesting to see with a lot of these picks. It's a really fascinating dream team you put together, mate. I'm pleased you chose the players that you did because, we could talk about... And actually, when I wrote down the other names, what ends up happening is it's those strikers.
Murray.
It's Glenn Murray, it's Kevin Phillips, it's Grant Holt, it's Cameron Jerome, it's David Nugent, it's Dwight Gale. Players that kind of played in a slightly different era, but were your old school centre forwards that did well and were ugly and difficult and somewhat dirty and absolutely infuriating if the opposition fan. But with Watkins, you have to sit there and applaud both his gumption to make his way through the leagues, but also his intelligence to develop himself and go to a high level. And actually, I think I did it on a video recently. We were sort of ranking the England strikers that were available. I actually think next season he'll be miles better, to be honest, because he'll be. Sometimes you go up to a division and you're sort of feeling around, going, "Am I good enough at this level? I think I am." And then you start the next season. Saw this with Eze massively. The next season he was like, "I know I'm good enough at this level."
Yeah. If you said to me, was this inevitable for Watkins when he made that move from Exeter? Let's say he could pick any of those 24 Championship clubs, whatever season it was. Would this have happened regardless of who he chose? No way. No way. I think there was a 20% chance that this would happen. Not that he wasn't a talented player in his own right, but choosing the right team as well is absolutely crucial.
Mate, that is your team. We have your manager in Bielsa as well. It's fascinating to chat to you, mate. I've really, really enjoyed it. Where can guys find you? I know we've spoken about not the top 20 podcast a few times, but where can people find you?
Well, certainly we tweet about the EFL a lot of bad memes, some good memes. At NTT20pod is the Twitter account for that. And I'm at Ali Maxwell _. You can listen to the podcast twice a week. I hope you'd give us a go because we really try and cover these leagues as closely as Premier League fans and analysts cover the Premier League. That's always been our mission statement. So we try our best. It's not always easy. But then the Zonal Marking podcast as well. I love doing that, talking tactics, tactical trends, data analysis and that sort of thing with Michael Cox and Tom Warville. And Friday nights on Sky, you can normally catch me and George. talking 10, 15 minutes about an EFL topic of our choice. Quite often it's young players. So any Friday nights where you're kicking around, hopefully this summer you'll mostly be out and about. But yeah, stick Sky Football on normally around 10:15. That's probably my favourite bit of work, to be honest with you, James. So I'm always keen for people to watch that.
Okay, guys, go check out Ali and all of those bits and pieces. Guys, if you've enjoyed it, first of all, get in the comments. Let's have a chat. Let me know what you think about your team. If you could like this video, it would massively help the video. And subscribe if you want to check out more from the channel. That also helps, of course, as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.